¿Y qué tal? Buenas noches tengan todos ustedes. Welcome everybody to these special transmissions where we have interviews with people who are actually great storytellers. We have already had some interviews with some writers, with film directors, with film producers, and now I am really honored to be joined by one of the comic book writers that I believe have a certain spark, a lot of talent, and actually you really enjoy reading the work that he has been doing for quite a while. So let's welcome Christopher Hastings. How are you doing, Chris?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
We're doing just fine in here. And as we were talking before the show, I believe that it's pretty much raining everywhere, not just in the United States, but also in Mexico. So, well, yeah. At least we have that right now in common with the weather.
Yes, it's you.
So, well, let me mention a little bit about the work that you have been doing, Christopher, because, well, I remember that... I have been reading actually your work for quite a while, but perhaps I didn't realize until I heard the recommendation of I believe the latest title that you have been writing, which is The Unbelievable Gwenpool, which started, I believe that, for me, the name actually didn't catch my attention because it seemed like a joke. And actually, the character started
This
as
is a very
joke.
common reaction.
Yeah. But for example, can you tell us a little bit how did the idea came for The Unbelievable Gwenpool?
Sure. So you know Spider-Gwen is a series that's going on. It's sort of a what if Gwen Stacy was bitten by the radioactive spider instead of Peter Parker. And that's been a big hit. And 1 month, Marvel decided to do a series of variant covers where they said, what if Gwen Stacy was all of these different heroes? What if you had, Gwen Vereen or Gwen Hulk or Gwen Vengers, or et cetera, et cetera. And then they did a Deadpool cover that was Gwenpool on the title. And that was all they were going to do with it, was just that one image. And then people started dressing up as her, making costumes and going to conventions as Gwenpool. They're drawing a lot of fan art. And Marvel saw all this engagement for a character that didn't technically exist yet outside of a costume and a name. And so my old Deadpool editor, Jordan White, called me up and asked if I wanted to give a shot at making Gwenpool make sense, with the caveat that she couldn't be related to Deadpool and she wasn't going to be a Gwen Stacy this time either. So I thought about that, and I basically kind of thought, like, what sort of expectations would come from that name and from that costume, and what can we do to make it different, not make it a Deadpool character, not make her Gwen Stacy, make her own character. And so, I was like, I really latched onto, like, the fourth wall breaking, the sort of the humor, and the sort of violent mercenary type stuff, with the big difference being that she doesn't have any powers. I thought that would be really interesting. And then somewhere in there, I realized that the solution to all this would be to have her be someone from the real world put inside the Marvel comic, and then it was off from there, just to see how she would react to things.
And for example, as we were talking before, it started as a joke. It started as a variant cover. However, it began gaining terrain in the mind of the readers, if I can put it that way. And actually, one of the things that I like the most about the title is that it plays with different levels. Obviously, it's really funny to read. Actually, I was looking. Let me see if I have one of the pages prepared in here. This is actually one of the covers of one of the latest numbers. It's issue 16, where actually I believe that the plot has been thickened and it has been getting a little bit more serious, because it's dealing with the fact that it's in a different reality. But the reality has actually some weight, and when you introduce the character, she's like, she's from a different dimension. You already mentioned that, and for her, the rest of the Marvel characters are comic book characters.
Yeah, fictional.
And she knows pretty much all the secrets, and she actually has some sort of power because she has good memory and knows all the secrets because she knows the characters and their stories. And I believe that she had actually some sort of how can I say it, a dangerous situation that you are exploiting in the latest story with Miles Morales.
Yeah.
Did you plan Did you plan her to have this kind of I don't know, confrontation with Miles?
Yeah, I felt like Miles was always sort of this perfect character to play that off of because they're close to the same age, and to her, he is, he's kind of the Spider-Man for her time. And so I just thought, and they're also like, there aren't that many characters that have secret identities in the Marvel universe, like say compared to the DC universe. I discovered it's like, it's like Daredevil and Thor currently, but like a lot of the Marvel characters kind of operate in public, except for, the Spider-Man guys and stuff like that. So Miles was a really good fit to sort of play off her messing around with secret identities kind of stuff. And after we did their first short appearance where it kind of was made to highlight just how irresponsible Gwen was at the time by playing her off of, a great power, great responsibility character, I was like, oh, Miles would make sense to bring back for this future event that we're hinting at, that like she breaks bad at some point in the future. And then he goes back in time, because what is comic books without time travel shenanigans?
Yeah. And that's something that is really, really interesting. Before we go a little bit forward, I just want to remember the people who is joining us in the transmission, like Richard Grayson, which I believe has nothing to do with the character with the same name with a different universe. I haven't fixed the crossover royalty, so it's a different Grayson. And the people who is actually joining us in Facebook, remember that if you send us any comments, either via Periscope, YouTube, or on Facebook, they will appear at the lower bar, actually, and I will be reading some of the most interesting that we have in here. So,
cool.
Getting back to Gwenpool, one of the things that I found fascinating about the character, and I mentioned this before we started the show, is that she reflects a very fresh and a very unique aspect of the comic book reader. Because after all, she's a comic book reader and she's a fangirl, and that's actually kind of dangerous. However, it's not as dangerous as some other fanboys, as Superboy Prime from from DC Comics. So, did you plan to do like a kind of an opposite, or it actually when the inspiration came from a different direction?
Well, yeah, I'll be completely honest. Like, I completely forgot about Superboy Prime when I started writing this. I forgot about Last Action Hero too. I guess they were all just cooking in my subconscious when I wrote this. But I also, like, I'm a longtime comic book reader, obviously, and I wasn't terrible. I don't think it even occurred to me to have her enter the comic and be some kind of crude nerd, like the comic book guy from The Simpsons or something. I like, there's a lot. I just wanted her to be more of a real person, even if she is, maybe a little over caffeinated or something sometimes.
And also the supporting cast that she has, well, I believe that there are some references like from other comic books like Saga from Brian K. Vaughan, because you also have a ghost character who is with hers, and actually it's like sort of the conscious, because it's the reflection of every action that you actually take has some effect in this universe, even when it's fictional, and it's always with her. And she started developing different relationships with, obviously, with Miles Morales, as we mentioned before, with the other character that I found fascinating. Let me see if I find in my Comixology collection the page. But for example, one of the Von Doom robots, which actually developed a different personality, and I love the way that you presented. Let me see if I have the page so I can show to the audience. But while I do that, can you tell us a little bit about the supporting characters from the Unbelievable Gwenpool?
Yeah, sure. So the big thing that I wanted with the supporting cast, whether they are pre-existing Marvel characters or new ones made up for the book, or characters that are sort of come out of the Marvel mythology, is with all of them, I'm trying to reflect some sort of aspect of what this world means to a real person. So, for example, Vinny the Doombot,
Mm-hmm.
his whole thing is that like he's kind of this opposite of Gwen, where Gwen thinks like Gwen is a completely normal person in the Marvel universe. She thinks it's amazing because of all these superheroes and stuff like that. And so I brought in Vinny to sort of bring in this counterpoint of like he is, you know, the basically the son of Doctor Doom in a way, and like he has, you know, he's a magical Doombot like the rest of them, and he just wants a normal life, and sort of like playing off of that. And then like we have Cecil, the ghost hacker, her sidekick buddy. He was brought in just sort of originally as this tool to like show that she has certain ideas about how a fictional universe works. She, you know, she believes, you know, in the rules of the tropes and like, you know, cliches and stuff like that. And so she thought she met this guy, and he was destined to be, you know, the guy in the room on the computer with the earpiece, like guiding her through missions and stuff like that, the hacker pal. And then he was just there to get killed at the end of the first issue and show that like maybe she's wrong about a lot of this sort of thing. Of course, I instantly felt bad about that and had to bring him back, but as a ghost. And then that's another way to show like, you know, to Gwen, he has ghost powers now. That's way better than being a normal person. He's like, no, I'm a ghost. I'm cursed. And as for the other members of their initial mercenary team, we had Backtrack the Leaper, who I have been trying to get into a Marvel comic for a long time now. I keep asking to use him no matter what I'm doing, and finally got was given the okay. Backtrack is a guy who is there to like kind of be this voice to the idea of, you know, what if we take the joke character, you know, like we were saying about Gwenpool, and giving it a little bit of humanity, and showing that, you know, these fictional characters, even the dumbest, third ratingest ones like Batroc, do have lives and they can be real people. And as for the rest of the team, I just tried to form them like a Dungeons and Dragons group. So you've got Megatoni, who's the healer, and you've got the Terrible Eye, who is the wizard. And then just to play them off of what I feel like this world is, it's like one of them's powers are science-based and the other one's powers are magic-based. So I was just trying to create like an on-paper round team. And oh yeah, as you see, I eventually got to do an issue where we called out that they're basically a Dungeons and Dragons team.
Exactly, and I was looking for this page because actually you take once again part of the troops of the characters and you mix them. In this case, with another mythology or another way of looking at them. In this case, when they were fighting Arcade, and it's really fun because, for example, Batroc, it's a character who is actually used more like a joke. It reminds me a little bit like Catman a long time ago. And you are doing for him something like similar to what Gail Simon did with Catman, because it's a really interesting character. And actually, it has a lot of humor, a lot of humanity, and it's not just the jumping guy who is the punching bag for the Captain America, which is I really love that. And one of the things that you develop in an excellent way at the beginning of the run is when you are showing how the characters, even though they have certain tropes, even though they have certain, I don't know, hero's journey, they can have more tones, they can have more ways of telling the story. And one of the other aspects that you touch in there is the way in that Gwenpool realizes when she's working with MODOK that, well, perhaps she's not a hero, she's a different character because she's working for one of the bad guys. So, for example, where did that idea came from?
You know, so like I mentioned early on, we had the start where I just had to kind of make the character make sense and give her enough of a origin And that was just for the Howard the Duck backups that she'd started off in. And that was kind of a test to see if she could like have enough of a fan base to get her on the series. And Marvel very quickly decided that let's do the series. So when the series started, that's when I met with Jordan again and Heather Antos, who has gone on to become the Gwenpool editor. So when I went into that meeting with Jordan and Heather, I knew that I wanted to basically have her try to be a hero, and nothing would work out for her on that mission. You know, things have to mess with her and she has to get in over her head. But it was Heather's idea. She said, why don't you make her a henchman? And so I just really ran with that. I just thought that was such a great way to go. It's like she's not even a villain. She's just a villain's, intern.
Exactly, and you have also some part of the different supporting characters for the supporting characters in some occasions. You see them like in the Daredevil, even in the Daredevil TV show, you have the character who makes the costumes, for example.
Of course.
But in here you add another layer, like, well, but you know that they they are not only doing that. Perhaps they also help them with to get some different jobs. And for example, part of the costume from Gwenpool, as you mentioned, it came from a variant cover, but you also play with the fact that, well, she's always looking for some pants for her costume.
Sure.
But she never. There is never enough material so they can actually make the costume as she expected it to be at the beginning.
Right.
But and you also develop different relations. As we mentioned, MODOK is part of the main characters at the beginning of the show, and it's having some of the most interesting ideas because it's also interacting with main characters like Thor, for example, and obviously it's not obvious, but for example, it's not with Odinson, but with the current mighty Thor that we have with Jane Foster. And it's part of an interesting dynamic because both characters are relatively new. Well, Gwenpool it's younger and it's a little bit newer, we can say that. However, you have the different aspects of responsibility. We have Miles Morales, as you mentioned before, and we have the Mighty Thor. We have also the cooler, younger Hawkeye in future issues. But they all start showing different aspects of how a young character can interact with in this case, these abilities, in this case, the knowledge of all the secret identities and powers. Did you, by any chance, think in also give a different set of, abilities, knowledge, or powers to the main character, to Gwenpool? Or use the knowledge was more than enough?
Well, I mean, like, what new power she gets?
No, if you were thinking in perhaps giving her something else besides just knowledge.
Oh yeah, we are totally getting into that. So in the most recent arc, it appears that she was sent back to her home universe, and then she starts seeing signs that she's still in a comic book, until she gets to the point where she can actually break free from the panel borders and start interacting with like word balloons and the blocks and stuff like that. And this greater awareness of the fact that she's in a comic book gives her some pretty serious powers, and that she can just exit the panel and like walk wherever she wants throughout time and space, depending on what's printed in the comic book. And that's really the direction the book is going in right now that we're working on. Once we wrap up this arc with her confronting her potential future evil self who has mastered these abilities and uses them for evil, is that she's testing out these new powers. And we are doing some pretty crazy stuff with that. We see the page here where she actually sees her own titles, and then later on, like she actually leaves the panel, stuff like that. So that's not something that's going away. Like those are real powers, but they're still coming from the same place that she knows she's in a comic book. It's a even greater awareness than just the basic level of like, oh, I know who Spider-Man is.
And also, that's actually that's issue 17 of the Unbelievable Gwenpool, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's this one that we're looking at right here.
And for example, that's actually what gave me the idea for the title of this episode because, obviously there are characters who are known for breaking the fourth wall. Deadpool is one of them, for example. Gwenpool also, in this case, perhaps not talking with the audience, but knowing about the metafiction narrative that you're playing with that, and also using it in a way that I have not seen perhaps in a long time, or perhaps ever. And it's actually what we have in the page in here, because she knows that the way that she's interacted with the medium, with a comic book page in this case, she can modify it. And in this case, with the dialogues, she start playing with this, and with this.
Yeah, I love how that page turned out.
Yeah, that one question before we go to some questions from the audience is like, how did you write the storyline before passing it for your artist to design these pages? How did you describe like all these elements that we have in here?
Yeah, well, we're definitely getting to the point where I have to do a little bit more back and forth with the artists and our letterer. Sometimes I have to do sketches. I will say for that particular page, I didn't have to. I was able to just write like it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it pushes her out a window. And then for the next page, I think I was like, just angle it so it's 3D so you can see it as a physical block pushing her out the window. But as we get into trickier stuff, I've had to do some sketches to help out. And I don't mind. It's fun to get to help out with the artwork. But yeah, it's just like it's a little bit more back and forth than usual. But you know, everybody who works on the book is great, and nobody's disappointed yet. They all take whatever I give them and run way farther with it than I would have imagined.
Yeah, and of course I love the work that you have been doing with the different artists. With hopefully I will pronounce the name correctly, with Gurihiru.
Yeah, that's right.
And Clayton Coles, as you mentioned, as a letterer, and well, obviously with your editors and everything. And I believe that it helps a little bit the fact that you yourself are an artist. So in case that you need to do some sketches, I think that might be
crucial. Yeah,
that helps a lot, I believe.
Yeah.
So
not as good as them, but you know, I've got you know, a long many years of practice drawing my own comic book pages. So yeah.
All right, so we're actually getting ready to have some questions from the audience. One will be on video, but while we do the connection in here, Richard Grayson once again in YouTube is leaving some comments, and he is asking, how far are you willing to push the character in terms of interacting with the readers in the case of Gwenpool?
Well, I really never want to, you know, as we're getting to this point where you see her, you know, breaking out of the fourth wall in a very literal sense. I'm really trying not to ever repeat a trick or let anything get stale. So I'm coming up with new ways for her to do it for every single issue. So, you know, we have an upcoming one where she's she gets trapped and she like in a situation and is able to fix it by jumping out of the panel, running back through her own comic book, and then starting again. And you'll actually see her as you're reading the comic in the background here and there, as she runs back in time, so that you can make the connection once you've read the future bit.
All right.
So we're pushing it pretty far.
Yeah. And actually, we will talk a little bit more about that. But let me welcome to one friend. Oh, we have in here Ricardo Rubio, better known as Psycho. How are you doing, Rick?
Hi, how are you doing? Glad to say hi to Mr. Hastings.
Hey, Ricardo. Nice to meet you too.
So,
hey.
Ricardo, I actually don't know him. We used art together in a different show called D-Strip-Ando, where we talk especially about comics. But besides that, I actually have no relationship with him. Nah, I'm just kidding. He's an excellent friend, and he's calling in this occasion. Do you have any question for Hastings while we have him in here, Rick?
Yeah, of course. I'm a fan from hell, like he said. And I actually enjoy very much your writing. It's very propositive. It's like, you know, to break the fourth wall all the time, almost all the time.
It gets worse and worse.
Yeah, Gwenpool is like a character that is very dangerous, if you like to think. she knows all the characters, no?
Yeah, it could be a problem in the future.
Yeah,
We'll see.
effective. But I would like to talk about both Loki,
Oh, okay.
another series that you did that was in a political tone in the time of the elections of the United States. Um, do you get any backlash? I would like to know that
Oh
because
boy.
I see now Mr. Spencer getting a lot of backlash, no?
Uh, yeah. I don't think I've gotten that kind of heat. But no, I think the only like I expected a lot more of that because I don't really do political stuff. Certainly got my opinions, but I usually kind of keep them to myself. But in that book, I really wanted to try to explore what it is to like create a narrative in politics, which because it happens all the time. Like people kind of make their own truths, and Loki seemed like a perfect character for that. And it kind of became more of an issue with like sort of how we ingest news and how we sort of create an identity around who we're voting for. I tried to make it about that. So I think because I didn't really focus on Democrat versus Republican kind of stuff, I didn't really get any crap from conservatives or liberals. I think the only real stuff I ran into were hardcore Loki fans who really just wanted me to get back to what the character was doing in, Loki Agent of Asgard or like the Young Avengers kind of stuff. And like, I read all of that and loved it. And I was like, I can't really juggle all these things at once. It's only 4 issues. But yeah, that would be the backlash I got was that.
Okay, and I would like to know what is easier to write a character like Gwenpool that you have the freedom of all kind, or a character established like Loki that has a lot of fans that we know. What is tougher? I don't know.
Oh my God, Loki was so much tougher. Loki was so hard to write. I had every single script went through several rounds of revisions, like notes back from multiple editors, like don't do this, don't do that. It went through so many changes along the entire way. And Gwenpool, I pretty much made her up. So like I'm kind of the authority on Gwenpool. So a script goes through no problem with her.
And it's kind of funny because I was just a little bit moment, Rick. It was kind of funny because, as you mentioned, you don't get into the political aspect, but however, you are touching it in a different way, and you have the conflict in this case with Thor, the mighty Thor. And for example, for the issue two, I remember, and I love this cover that it's in here because obviously it's an homage. Yeah.
He's one of my favorite cover artists.
Yeah. And the style, it's like really, how can I say it, really expressive in the faces. And it's a classic Captain America cover, but in this case, even though it doesn't focus on the political way, it makes you laugh, and it actually makes you think a little bit more about the way that politics are running, not just in the United States, not just in Mexico, but around the world. But, Rick, I believe that you have one more question or one more comment.
Yeah, I would like to know, like many fans, if you have another project in place.
Yeah, but I can't talk about
it. Okay.
Don't worry, you can say it in Spanish.
I have 2 really cool projects that are currently secret right now. One is at Marvel that I have no idea when it's coming out. And then I have another one for another publisher that I don't know when they're going to announce I'm working on it. So we'll see. But yeah, I got new fun stuff coming, which is good because this is my job and I need that constantly.
All right.
It will be a fresh start. Thanks a lot. Please.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
All right, excellent, Rick. Thanks for calling in, and we continue a little bit with the conversation in here, and we have some more questions from the audience. In this case, from the same from sorry, I just missed the mark. Oh, I have it in here. And also, Richard Grayson is asking again, have you ever thought of having She-Hulk in the book, since she was breaking the wall in John Byrne's, well, in pretty much in her entire history?
Yeah, I would love to have, like, I mean, I don't think She-Hulk's not really quite like that, like the way that she was during that run anymore, but, like, I think it would be so cool to have, like, She-Hulk come on as a mentor in that particular style of fourth wall breaking, because it's kind of different than how Deadpool was doing it. I think it is more related to how She-Hulk was doing it. But I think that would be, like, super cool if we could do that.
Yeah. And also in this case, it's a little bit more of an interaction, more with people instead of characters. And
yeah.
And one other question that we have is, has the cosplayer who went as Gwenpool in the first place contacted you? How are the reactions from the characters? How are the reactions from the fans at the comic conventions to the characters, since to the character of Gwenpool, since in a way you're actually reflecting them, as we mentioned at the beginning?
Yeah. I don't know who the very first Gwenpool cosplayer was. She may have been in touch and just not mentioned that. I've definitely talked to a couple of them who were among the first, and they seem excited that they, that she's a real character now. As for, like, people at shows, man, I have never signed books at a comic convention like I do for Gwenpool. I mean, I've been doing Dr. McNinja for over a decade, and, like, shows go well for me, and I'll do a Deadpool here or there, Vote Loki or a long shot or something like that. But now that I'm doing Gwenpool, like, at conventions, people bring up long boxes of comics to get signed. And that is very new for me. So great response to the shows. It's a lot of fun.
That's great. And I really love the fact that you are getting more work in this case, even though we cannot discuss this in public, but perhaps maybe later.
We can talk about Gwenpool or Groot. Those are the two things I can talk about that I'm working.
There you are. No, but actually, I would love to talk a little bit about the first character that you created and the way that it actually helped you to launch your career. And you were actually drawing, not just writing this character. And of course, I am talking about the glorious and famous Dr. McLuchador. No, sorry, I am perhaps a little bit mistaken. I'm talking about Dr. McNinja, which we have in here. But sorry, I had to ask, because he's a great representative of medicine in Mexico, and well, I didn't brought.
I'm glad to hear it.
I didn't brought my mask from McLuchador, but I brought my wrestling mask in here, just to represent the one of the finest professions that we have in here.
Excellent.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about Dr. McNinja, which is actually I did recommend in a different segment from the D-Strip-Ando show, the one with Ricardo and with Richard Grayson that we do about comic books, and I have always been recommending in this case the first omnibus, because you have obviously a lot of references, and one that I am touching in this page where Dr. McNinja is thinking, well, how would Batman actually solve this situation? And then we have the classic scene where it's, you need a rooftop, you have to crash it, and then you have to fight the criminals. Yep. But tell us about the inspirations that you had for the Dr. McNinja.
Oh boy, you can really see early Gwenpool style stuff there, making fun of what happens typically in a comic book scene. So Dr. McNinja, before he was a similar thing, he was a name before he was a comic book character. I needed a new internet handle. All my friends, have been calling me Dr. Hastings, and then I didn't want that as my internet handle. So I was like, oh, I still like being called a doctor. What else do I like? I like chicken McNuggets. I like ninjas. Maybe we'll combine all that and Dr. McNinja. So for a while, I was Dr. McNinja online. And then I started thinking, like, what would that look like? And I started doodling this, you know, doctor with a ninja mask. And I eventually just sort of kind of thought about it as a character, and then slowly would write down little ideas about, like, well, if there was Dr. Ninja were to exist in a world, what else would exist in that world? You know, like, oh, well, we'd have, you know, his family would be a bunch of ninjas. They'd probably be unhappy that he was a doctor. And what other crazy crap can we throw at it? And that kind of logic spiral blew out the entire world of Dr. McNinja. And that's kind of where it came from. It was a place for me to do my first, like, funny comic. I was in school to learn how to draw comics, the School of Visual Arts, and I was doing a lot of superhero traditional storytelling kind of stuff. And I was always sneaking jokes into my homework assignments. And finally I was like, I just want to do a superhero comedy. That's what I want to do. So I did the first one where he fights McDonald's in college, and then you know, showed it around, and it got a pretty big response. I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do after I graduate. I'm going to start drawing Dr. McNinja. And I did that for 11 more years.
Yeah, and actually that helped a lot. Obviously, if you follow closer, and actually that's why I love the first omnibus, because obviously in the first pages you can see a little bit more of raw
bad
style.
drawings.
But actually I really like that, because as I mentioned, it's raw, so you have the ideas in there and are like fighting to be represented on the page. And obviously, like the first page that I showed, where we have the introduction of the sorry, I just love this page with the Dr. Magluchador. But if you compare with the first pages, for example, right now I am rereading the first tom, and I am with the let me just find the page so the people can see the layouts.
There it is.
And here we are.
Well, that was not so
but and I remember I love, for example, you can read that, everybody. You can just go to drmcninja.com and just read it.
Please do. I'm still paying for the bandwidth.
Okay, so there you are. And also in there, while you are in there, you can buy stuff. I actually bought from there the first omnibus from Comixology.
Oh, thank you.
And I love the fact that in the Comixology version, you have comments at the bottom of the pages, which are not available on the regular.
Oh, you hover your mouse over it and they pop up.
Oh, but I wanted the people to buy the thing.
Oh, whoops!
No, sorry, that's a mistake. So actually, you have to buy it. So I was trying to help you a little bit. All right. So yes, there you have some sort of commentary track of the comic itself, and you actually have some recommendation. People, if you want to have some sort of inspiration for your Halloween costume, I believe that Dan McNinja has a really good recommendation in here, and you can go as a ninja on fire, because people cannot grab you if you are on fire.
That's right.
So we have some more questions from the audience just before we close this interview. And one really important question now that I am seeing is that, all right, let's get serious about this, Christopher. And Mr. Hastings, I want an honest answer from you. Who would win in a fight between Batman and Dr. McNinja?
Oh boy, you know, I've been asked this question before, and I answer it differently depending on the time in my life. I think Batman would win. I think Batman could beat Dr. McNinja.
Why? Why is that? Is your character?
Because you know what? I think Dr. McNinja believes that too.
After all, he believes, but I believe that he would be, like, I don't know, willing to lose, because he wouldn't want his hero to actually be a lesser person than what.
Sure, yeah. You know what they say? Don't beat up your heroes.
There you are. So, well, there you have it. That's an answer that I wasn't expecting. But if you were going to write that fight, it would be like for an entire series, a long saga for 2 trade paperbacks, or it would be just like one comic, one page?
No, I would absolutely milk that confrontation. That would be a pretty big deal of a story. Yeah, 2 books. We'll do 2 books.
All right.
I'll call up DC. We'll make it happen.
That sounds good. Actually, but let me say, I believe that I have my namesake Dan Didiot on the line. So let me see. No. Hopefully, I will be like, and Jim Lee is in here too. So
Yeah, all Dans are tight, right?
yeah. We're all the same. We know each other. It's like.
Yeah. You know my dad, Dan.
yeah. And actually, that's part of kind of sort of a funny story because for these videos a long time ago when I started doing not live streamings, but I did some short sketches, and one of my characters was an homage for the original Ask a Ninja web show.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I had the Ask Dan Ninja, which is the same character with Daddy and in Spanish. As you can see, I'm not very original. But the thing is that we all Dan know each other. So, all right. So pretty much we are getting to the end of this transmission. However, if people want to get in touch with you, they can do it very easily, if I'm not mistaken, via Twitter. Is that correct?
That's right. Although my mentions are kind of a mess these days. Not everything gets through. But also like my email is just drhastings@gmail.com.
Which actually there you have it. If you have any recommendations, if you want to get in touch with Christopher, it's really easy to do it. However,
very easy to do it.
Yeah, believe me, I contact him, and within a couple of days we arranged this meeting. So, and actually, I thank you a lot, Christopher, because it was really easy to have this conversation because you are a great man. You have a great sense of humor. You are very approachable, and you are a very talented person. And even though you have a lot of talent, you don't get that to get on your head. So I really love the fact that it's really easy and really.
Well, I thank you for believing that, Dan. Thank you very much.
Perhaps there's a darker secret in there. Well, anyway.
No. Very humble, very humble.
Well, and remember, if you want to know more about his different characters, you can go to ChristopherHastings.com, and you can read there the McNinja comics, and you can actually get in there recommendations from his books in Comixology, where I was reading some of the McNinja omnibus in there, and also you can get a lot of recommendations, and also something that I actually didn't know that you did, because you also do sketch comedies, right?
Yeah, I sure do. That's the other big thing I do besides comics. I've been writing and performing sketch comedy for several years. I currently direct a sketch team in New York City called the Nitro Girls. They're at the Magnet Theater. And then I also am putting up a show of my own stuff that I've written the entire show, and I'm performing most of it. There's my headshot. And called the Dr. Hastings Miracle Show. And I'll tell you, this is a big show. This is a big show. We have a live jazz band that's going to be accompanying all of our sketches. And I've written new songs for them to perform. And we've got some magic, a little bit of stage magic we're going to be doing as part of the show as well. It's going to be quite a show. And that's September 11th at the Magnet Theater. And you can find that information on any of these websites we've talked about, because I'll be plugging it from now until then.
There you have it, people. If you are in New York, please don't hesitate and make some time. Remember, September 11 at the Magnet Theater, and it sounds like it will be a wonderful time. It will be a blast. I didn't know. Do you also practice magic, or it's some other people doing the magic while you do sketches or something? Or it's a surprise?
I don't do a ton of magic. It's more like... I say magic. It's more of there's like one sketch in particular where there's a big trick. It's not exactly sleight of hand, but I'm not going to spoil it. But I know little bits and pieces of magic. There's an issue at Adventure Time that I wrote that has a magic trick in it that the reader can play along with as they read the comic. I forget which issue it is, though. Sorry.
Oh, but there you have it. You have one more excuse to go to Comixology right now and buy it, or go to your nearest comic book shop and buy that. So, Christopher, it was a real and an honest pleasure to be talking with you, and hopefully we will be able to get you for a different time for a different talk, perhaps about a different topic, or perhaps we can even make I don't know, ninja crossover or magic tricks. I don't know, something like that.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes, it was a real pleasure. And remember, people, follow him on Twitter. Don't follow him. Don't follow him on person because that's called stalking. So please be a little bit more respectful about his personal space.
If they come to that show at the magnet, they can come say hi. I'm always happy to say hi to people at the magnet shows.
All right, so there you are, and please go. Remember, Monday, September 11th, and New York in the Magnet Theater. And well, thank you everybody for your questions. Thank you everybody for being with us with this transmission. Remember that tomorrow you will be able to download the audio for this show. And if you like the kind of talks, the kind of interviews that we're having here, remember that you can always support us, and the only thing that you have to do is wait for my webpage to load before I actually show you. You can go to Churros y Palomitas in Patreon, patreon.com/Churros y Palomitas. In English is churros and popcorn, so it's not really hard to
I was wondering what that second one was.
there you are.
We have plenty of churros in my part of Brooklyn, though.
Oh, that's now I have more reasons to go there and actually do a churro
they sell
tour.
them on the subway. Yeah, you can get a churro anywhere.
Oh, that's fine. Well, but you cannot get the kind of churros that we have in here. Churros
Probably not.
Exactly. But remember, in patreon.com/Churros y Palomitas, you can support these kind of projects. And once again, Christopher, it was a real pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Likewise.
All right. And see you, everybody, in the next show.